and welcome everyone. I am Shelley Maddox, a political science and legal studies major here at Metropolitan State University of Denver. I am a voting engagement student ambassador with the Voting Engagement Project at MSU Denver. The goal of our project is to provide outreach to voter education to our students and to our community. We hope to engage students and the public in civic activities and encourage them to make their voices heard about important issues in our community, particularly at the polls during the upcoming elections. Today, I will be interviewing Nick Mann. Mr. Mann is a campaign finance liaison at the Denver Clerk and Recorder's Office and a self-described local government nerd. He is a graduate of the University of Arizona, where he did his undergraduate studies, and is a graduate of the University of Colorado at Denver's School of Public Affairs, where he earned his master's degree in public administration. He is committed to improving public transparency in Denver's elections and assisting those running for office. He has previous experience working for candidates and elected officials at various levels of government. So, welcome.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
Good. So we're gonna be interviewing about campaign finance things today, and so we want to, if you can, talk about your work at the Clerk and Recorder's Office and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. First, it's great to be on campus. Thank you for having me and giving us the opportunity to talk about campaign finance. It's a subject near and dear to my heart, not necessarily everyone else's, so it's exciting to talk about. So first, just the Office of the Clerk and Recorder. I'm sure you're most familiar, or the viewers are going to be most familiar with their role in administering elections here in Denver, but there's a number of other things that our office does. Most exciting, perhaps, is marriage licenses. So if you want to get married in the city of Denver, you come to our office.
Definitely.
But we also record documents, do lobbying registrations for municipal lobbyists, and my role of being the custodian of campaign finance records for candidates running for local office. So in that role, I get to help candidates file their reports and make sure they're staying compliant with the law and providing the public the data that they're required to provide.
Awesome. That's very informative. Thank you. So we're gonna start with some questions about campaign finance. So why do you think that's an important issue, and why should the average voter care about that?
So I think there's two kind of things that the average person should know or care about campaign finance. The first is that the purpose of campaign finance laws and regulations is really to provide guide rails and level the playing field, limit the influence of money, even though I'm sure we all think that money has a lot of influence in politics. So at almost every level, there's a certainly at the city of Denver and also nationally, there are limits on how much an individual can give directly to a candidate, right? So that limits the amount of an individual donor who can give to a candidate. Similarly at the state here in Colorado, a registered lobbyist cannot give to a legislator while they're in legislative session. I think that that makes sense as a way to limit the influence of lobbying in that policy, in the policymaking process. Similar things at the federal level, where we've got prohibitions on federal contractors contributing to federal candidates. So there's a lot of guide rails that really seek to limit the influence of money. But then the second thing is that the campaign finance provides transparency to the public. So all the reports that our office publishes are publicly available. So if a candidate's running for office, you can go in and you can see where they're raising their money and how they're spending it. So the average person watching this might be able to see that a candidate they are inclined to support, do they have support from the local community? Do they have support from organizations through their political action committees that you might be inclined to agree with ideologically? So a business association, a labor union, an ideological group like environmental or reproductive rights, are those groups contributing for or against a candidate? That's useful information for a voter to have.
That is very useful. So, how does that work, and how does that work, and how do those regulations differ at the federal and local levels?
Yeah. So there's a couple commonalities that are real interesting. One is that at every level, we're seeing huge increases in the number of dollars spent. So one kind of fun fact is in the sort of history of campaign finance for Senate races at the federal level, of the top 10 most expensive Senate campaigns in the history of the FEC regulating them, 9 of them happened in 2020. So recently, real big dollars, and the one that didn't happen in 2020 happened in 2018. So recently, lots of big dollar amounts, and that's for the whole country. Here in Colorado, just as an example, some of the viewers may have followed the Senate campaign last year between then Senator Gardner and now Senator Hickenlooper. When Senator Gardner first won in 2014, this is old news now, but he beat Senator Mark Udall in 2014.
Yes.
During that, Senator Udall raised $21 million. Senator Gardner raised 14. Those are big numbers, right?
That's a lot of money.
Okay.
Yes.
6 years later, during Senator Gardner's attempted reelect, he lost to Hickenlooper. It's 28 million for Gardner and 43 for Hickenlooper. So very big increases in a pretty short amount of time here in Colorado.
That's very interesting, and those are very large numbers to be dealing with. So recently, voters may have recalled that they voted on certain program that allowed
It's public funding.
Public funding,
Yeah.
yes, public funding to. They voted on that to provide funding for the candidates who signed on to agree to certain stipulations. Can you tell us about that program?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly right. So in 2018, the voters here in Denver, just the city and county of Denver, voted to create something called the Fair Elections Fund. So this was brand new, and it's really exciting. It's our first year doing it, so it's going into effect for the 2023 mayoral and municipal election. So next year, and it's a little bit complicated, but the long and short of it is, the city will match with public funds a participant in the fund their first $50 of a contribution from a Denver resident 9-to-1. So what that means is, if you're running for mayor and you're a Fair Elections Fund candidate, and I give you $10, the city will match that with $90.
Wow, that's very great.
Yeah, so if a $50 donation can be $450 plus the original $50, so it really empowers small dollar donors here in the city. You have to be a city resident. So there's a lot of complexity to it. You have to go through a qualification process. You have to demonstrate a threshold of support before you can qualify. But once you qualify, if you're running for city council, you can get up to $125,000 in taxpayer funds, up to, if you're running for mayor, $750,000 in taxpayer funds.
That's really cool. That sounds like it can give some of our other citizens a chance to run where they might not normally be able to if they didn't have that match. That sounds really awesome. Yeah,
and on that point, I think we're still, like I said, it's our first cycle. We're not, we're very curious to see how it's gonna play out and how the candidates are gonna respond to it. But we're really excited that 44 candidates have actually signed up already. Yeah, so 44 candidates have signed up to either to state that they want to participate in the Fair Elections Fund. Out of 50. It's about 56 total have declared, and of the 56, 44, I believe, about that. So we're seeing most candidates running for office opt in. And one thing to note, actually, in addition to the matching, you actually voluntarily lower the donation threshold that you can receive. So a candidate for mayor who's not participating in the program can accept $1,000 from a donor. If you're participating in the program, you can only accept $500. So it's another way that the program is trying to empower small dollar donors and reduce the influence of large donations. It also bans Fair Elections Fund candidates from accepting donations from political action committees.
That's very amazing. So thank you for sharing. So we have an election coming up in November. Will the clerk's office be mailing and counting the ballots?
Yes, of course. So yes, the ballots are going to be mailed out on October 17th. Election day is November 8th. There are going to be 43 ballot boxes around the city that are open 24/7 that folks can drop off their ballots. In addition, there's going to be in-person VSPCs, which is our fancy acronym for Voter Service Protection, I'm sorry, and polling centers.
Polling centers.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, you knew that. I just call it a VSPC. But there's also going to be those in person if folks want to go in person. Folks will get them on the 17th and then have until November 8th to mail them back.
Awesome.
A couple other things, if you don't mind. So just one thing since we're talking about campaign finance. So our office's role in this election is, again, to count the ballots, but we're also in charge of the local ballot initiative. So right now, between now and November 8th, all of the local spending for all the local ballot initiatives will go through our office. And then after this, that's when we'll get excited about the mayoral election, which is until April of next year. So next semester for the students.
Yes.
There'll be an election in April and then a runoff in June.
Cool. That's really amazing. I'm really excited to see all the voters getting out for the election this year, and I just am glad to be here supporting that. So let's move on to the next thing here. So do you have any other key points that you hope our audience will take away from the session today, or what advice would you give them, or where would you send them for more information?
Oh gosh, okay, all good questions. So first, on the campaign finance is really about transparency. That's really our office's role, is be transparent about how people are raising money, how they're spending it. I just looked this morning, there's a nonpartisan nonprofit that tracks federal spending and campaigns, and they expect this year's midterm, their current estimate is, let me make sure I get this right because the number is so huge, it is $9.3 billion
Wow.
in federal election spending this year. So there's just a tremendous amount of money, and offices like ours across the country, you know, Denver Clerk and Recorder's Office locally, the Secretary of State's for the state, the Federal Election Commission. You know, our job is to collect these records and make them available to the public and to the media, so that, you know, if the newspaper wants to write a story about how campaigns are raising money, that you can read it and understand how these things are being funded. That's the big takeaway at the sort of national level. At the local level, I want folks to get excited about not only voting in this election in November and watching for their ballot on after the 17th of this month, but know that there's a really big election for the city next year. It's going to be an open mayoral campaign. The mayor is termed out, so it'll be the first time since 2011 that there's no incumbent mayor. And it's the first time that we're doing this Fair Elections Fund. So we're expecting a lot of excitement, up to $8 million of public money in this Fair Elections Fund. And so we're really excited about that, and we hope folks will pay attention and you know, get involved in these local races.
That's awesome. Yes. So next, so we just wanted to say thank you for coming out and being a part of our project here with the voter engagement project here. And we appreciate you come out. We appreciate that you came out, and we are looking forward to hearing more about campaign finance in the future and the upcoming election in November, as well as next year's big election.
Yes,
So,
and I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off because I forgot. If folks have more information, want to find their nearest VSPC, denvervotes.org is the place they can go. denvervotes.org. Information about voting, about what's going to be on their ballot, any questions there. Make sure you go there, get your questions answered. It's a long ballot this year. It's 3 pages back and front for Denver voters. So our motto this year is get it, fill it, and drop it, because we want to count all those votes. We want them to be in early.
Yes.
We want to make sure that we can report, the sooner you vote, we start, we can report results earlier on election night when folks get their ballots in. So I know on election night, I'll be hard at work along with our team counting ballots into the early morning. So
definitely.
thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and talk about campaign finance.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming out.